Hi there, it's Nicole here today with a couple of cards featuring some ink layering or some color layering using new stamps from Altenew's December 2017 release. This release is chock full of amazing stamps, dies, and this adorable mini Blossom die cutting machine, which I'm going to show in action in the video. We're going to start with the Floral Card, and I'm going to take stamps from the Flower Arrangement stamp set. This is a large, oversized stamp set like we're used to from Altenew. A 6x8 stamp set. It's got beautiful florals, a couple of beautiful scripty style of greetings, and the dies coordinate with the florals and leaves, plus there's two scripty die cut greetings that if you don't want to use the scripty stamps, you can use the dies, which is what I'm going to do for my card today. It really just kind of depends on the design. I love when there's that option of stamping stamping or die cutting. I am using Altenew inks to layer my flowers. This is the blush ink. That's going to be my base layer for the flowers. All three flowers are going to be stamped with blush ink first. And I ended up stamping more flowers than what I actually used for my card. I wasn't quite sure when I started my card design where exactly the card was going to take me. Sometimes I start out with a very specific card idea, and other times it's a little bit more of a struggle to get to the finished design. I had a general idea, but it just kind of kept evolving, which is perfectly okay. Crafting is playing, it is fun, and it should be. And so sometimes it might take you in a different path than what you originally had planned. My next layer is going to be stamped with the Rouge Altenew Crisp Ink. And I'm going to do a little disclaimer here. The big flower you're watching me stamp, I am not going to stamp that again on camera. It is not lined up right. I had a heck of a time getting it lined up right. I don't know what my deal was because it actually lines up really easily. So I had walked away for a couple hours. I had to go to a school program thing for my daughter. And when I came home, I was like, what in the world? And so I went ahead and stamped that again and fixed it. These inks layer beautifully, which is what we all have come to know and love about Altenew. They are just the best at having the inks and the stamped images that layer so beautifully to give you those dimensional looking images. My third layer, and this is the final floral layer as far as most of the flower, not counting the flower centers, is going to be stamped with crimson ink. And this is really going to deepen and darken, and that is going to give you all that depth and dimension for these flowers. Look how pretty those are. If you use a stamp press or a MISTI or something like that, it makes doing this kind of technique so much easier. Plus, I like to stamp multiples at one time to make things go a little faster. But if you need to stamp the image more than once, a stamp positioner is just really the best thing for doing this kind of technique. Now the leaves are so beautiful. I am going to be stamping these. I'm going to go ahead and go to the leaves and we'll move back to the flower centers. With the Forest Glades Altenew ink first. And that is so pretty. In fact, the leaves are beautiful like this. But once you add the additional two images on top and really give it that depth and dimension, it's just phenomenal. My next color is going to be the Evergreen ink from Altenew. That's going to be the middle layer. So my lightest, the way I always do it is start with my lightest and move to the darkest. And in fact, my darkest color today is going to be something you might normally not think of, but I'm using jet black ink, and it's going to be my final color layered on top of all of this to really deepen and darken these leaves. I wasn't sure how it would work. This was kind of an experiment for me, and I ended up absolutely loving it. Loving it so much that the jet black became my little highlight, or that final piece in the middle of each of the flowers as well, because I really felt it built that depth and dimension and added that look I was going for with all the images. I didn't want the leaves to have one look and the flowers to have another. I wanted it all to flow together really, really nicely. Now the flower center fits so easily inside of this large flower. It was very easy to line up. I usually try to find one little point on the image and line it up and then shift that stamp until it's lined up perfectly and then stamp that in place. Now I stamped this with Rouge ink for my initial stamped image. Please know that in my final card, I stamped that with Velvet Altenew ink instead. It's going to be a little bit deeper and darker than even the crimson. Not a lot, but just enough that it adds a little bit different look. And then I went in with the jet black ink as my final layer. I did not do that on this first image here. I was kind of trying other things out, and it ended up being okay because I did not like how that flower turned out, as I mentioned earlier. It just wasn't lined up correctly. For the other two, they're going to be stamped, or this one, rather, the medium-sized flower is going to have velvet ink in the middle, and then that jet black ink on top. And the smallest flower, that little piece on the inside, is going to be in jet black ink. And that will finish off each of these really nicely. In fact, because I knew this flower wasn't working out, I went ahead and just tried the jet black ink on top of that to see how that looked, if I thought that was going to work going forward. And that way, when I go back to stamp my final flower, I know what color combination I want to use. Sometimes it's a little bit of trial and error with this color layering, ink layering, color layering, whatever you want to call it, simply because some inks look good together, some do not, and it's just kind of whatever you personally love. Here is the Altenew Mini Blossom die cutting machine. It is so super cute. It has the small type of cutting pads. The exact dimensions are on my blog. So this is going to be, it's very similar to a Sidekick from Sizzix. So it's great. It's portable. If you are going to stamp with friends, if you are going to a little crop and you just want to tuck that in your bag and take it with you, this isn't like carrying your huge die cutting machine. This is just a teeny tiny great little machine. Maybe you like to stamp a whole bunch of things and you want to die cut them while you are waiting for your kids or whatever. This transports so easy. It's a great little desktop machine. If you tuck your big machine away and don't want to always get it out, this little one is so fantastic for just die cutting small things and works so easily. You just sandwich your paper and dies through the two cutting plates, run it through one pass. Look how awesome it die cuts these images. So amazing. I was just thrilled when I taped my dies in place, ran them through. It wasn't any back and forth or anything like that. It just die cut them. Works like butter. I can't say enough great things about it. Plus the style is adorable. The color is fantastic. The floral design on it is so cute. If you're looking for a little die cutting machine, maybe you're just getting started, or you want something that you can carry with you very easily without having to lug one of those heavy machines around, this is a fantastic option. And it's packaged beautifully. I meant to show the packaging in the video and I just simply forgot. I'll try to share that on Instagram later. It comes beautiful. I think this would be amazing wrapped up underneath the tree for your favorite crafter. Here are all of those leaves. I just love the leaves. I don't know what it is, but I loved how that jet black worked with the greens for these for whatever reason. And I thought they turned out beautiful. So the little cutting pads and the machine come in the box together. Now this is a piece of white cardstock I have adhered to a piece of fun foam with stick-it adhesive. I wanted to show how the die cutting machine cuts a dimensional type of paper, and it die cut it beautifully. One pass of the machine, again, no rolling back and forth. That dimensional fun foam material, it die cut perfectly. And we'll see that in the finished card product. Now I worked and worked trying to find a kind of background I wanted to use. I didn't feel like keeping my background white for whatever reason. I love white backgrounds, but it just wasn't how I felt like finishing my card, I guess. So what I ended up doing, I was trying to go for kind of a monochromatic type of look with my alcohol inks. And I started out with a green ink, the lettuce green ink, and it was not working. I really saturated it with colorless blender, and then I would move the paper almost to a 90-degree angle. I'm just using a palette knife because I was trying to keep my fingers out of it so I didn't get finger marks. And while I absolutely love the design, the color was not right at all. The great thing about this paper, this is the Yupo paper, is that you can go ahead and just cover that up. I just kind of wiped up my mess here. In fact, I need to clean this better, but I'm going to grab another color of ink, of alcohol ink, and I'm going to grab the Meadow ink. It's a little bit deeper and darker. You'll see that here. And I'm just going to put a whole bunch of dots all over my paper again. And it dries super fast. This is a technique that really goes real fast. I'm going to really saturate this with colorless, or not colorless, with the blending solution. And again, I'm going to tip my paper. I don't really want the drops. I don't really want to do a stripe kind of design. I want it to be a little more organic. I want it to almost look like a watercolor, but have the intensity of the alcohol inks. And I want a lot of that excess ink to just kind of drain off there. You can see it's still really working with the colorless blender. I'm going to go ahead and put more on there and tip it the other way. Kind of grab it by the sides. And there were a couple places where it wasn't moving, so I just put a little more colorless blender on. Tip this up again. And this is really going to end up being perfect. I think it looks great with the colors of the leaves. It has intensity, but still has that watercolor-ish type look. That is the finished panel right there on the right side of the screen. And I love how it has some darker areas and lighter areas. Turned out really good, and I'm glad I went with a darker color on top. I'm going to adhere this piece to the center of a white side fold card base. And I didn't get it quite centered, so I'm going to have to remove it real quick. I was having issues getting things centered for whatever reason. But then I will center this, and I'm going to attach all of my flowers with a little bit of foam tape. These scrapbook adhesives, foam adhesive squares, are fantastic. They're really low profile, but yet still add a little bit of dimension. And I'm going to start with my biggest flower in the center and work my way out with greenery and tuck in a couple of the smaller flowers on each side. And it's going to kind of create this border along the bottom edge. And then I can tuck my, or adhere rather, my greeting up above that in all of that kind of quote-unquote white space. So there is the design. Here is my foam adhesive greeting. Just going to tuck that right there, press it down in place. And then I have stamped a greeting from the Peony Spray stamp set on white cardstock, trimmed it into a strip, and adhered that right below. I'm going to finish my card with a scattering of Nouveau Crystal Drops in Morning Dew and Pale Gold. The Morning Dew I think looks amazing like dewdrops on floral designs. It's one of my favorite things to do. And the gold just kind of gives it a little bit of an elegant type of finish. For my next card, I'm going to be using the Love You So Mush stamp set. It is these darling little mushrooms that I absolutely loved, and I thought the sentiments were so cute, very punny. And I decided I wanted to do a rainbow of mushrooms against an aqua background. So again, we're going to create a very similar background to the last card. But this time our images are going to be stamped with Distress Oxide inks. I love layering with a pigment ink. Pigment inks give beautiful coverage for solid stamped images, and they work great for this. Because Distress Oxides have pigment ink in them, they are going to be fantastic for this kind of technique. This would work with the Altenew crisp inks as well. If you have a bunch of colors, I think it would be really fun to see how this looks with the Altenew inks. I just was trying to use different inks to show color layering with different ink brands. So I've got all of my little mushroom stems here stamped with Vintage Photo Distress Oxide ink. The yellow mushroom is Fossilized Amber and Spiced Marmalade. The hearts are Candied Apple. This little mushroom I'm stamping here, the base is Picked Raspberry, and I will stamp the layering image with Candied Apple over top this, and it gives it some fun little dots all over. There's two different basic layering type of images for these mushrooms. There's kind of the spotted one, and then the one that is more solid up at the top and kind of fades out like that yellow mushroom you see there, the yellow and orange. I love that there's different options for these mushrooms. They were really, really fun to create. They're very easy to line up and stamp, and I think can be used in lots of different ways. I think it would be fun to stamp these as an all-over background as well without the use of the dies if you wanted to. Just very cute, very fun, and like I said, the punny type of greetings here make this super, super cute and perfect for Valentine's and beyond. Now, I did stamp this mushroom here with peacock feathers, pardon me. Yeah, peacock feathers, that's correct. And layered Salty Ocean over the top, and Lucky Clover over top, and it just gets lost. It did not work. So I went back to one of my tried and true color combinations. I used the cracked pistachio first and layered on Lucky Clover, and I love that color combination. You can see that that looks so much better, so much more natural. Then I used Salty Ocean and Faded Jeans together. The other pink mushroom is Picked Raspberry with Wilted Violet on top. We're going to do one more big mushroom. The base will be a little Spiced Marmalade. And layering over that with Candied Apple. So you can see you just line that up. Again, a stamp positioner makes this so easy. It's almost foolproof, which I really love. We want to get to the actual assembly part and don't want to be wasting tons of time stamping and restamping and, thinking you have it lined up and it ends up not being. That's so disappointing. So a stamp positioner of some kind makes ink layering so much easier. I think I need another little stem for as many mushrooms as I have, so I will go ahead and stamp that real quick before I start the die cutting. Now, one thing is I did stamp all of these on a little bit bigger piece of paper than what will fit through the mini Blossom die cutting machine. I simply cut it in half, lined up as many of the dies as I could get through the machine at one time with one pass. In fact, that one shifted, so I'm going to have to restamp that. But die cut as many as I could at once, and then I'm just going to keep doing this to get all of my images die cut. Quite a bit of die cutting here with all these teeny tiny little pieces, but I think the final card is totally worth it. You just sandwich your paper and dies between the two cutting plates, run it through your machine, and it's so quick and easy. Now for this background, we're going to use a little aqua alcohol ink with blending solution. Again, I'm just getting that color down on the paper because I want to tip the paper almost to a 90-degree angle and work that ink back and forth to get that watercolorish type looking background. I'm going to really saturate the paper again with the blending solution. It helps that ink move and gives it that really amazing look. So here is tipping it the first time. Lots of lines, which I think that looks kind of cool. But I am going to go back and I'm going to add just a little more blending solution. A few more drops here and there. There's really no right or wrong. It's totally playtime, which is really fun. Again, tip that up. And you can see that it really kind of pooled the ink in the middle and moved it away in those four corners, and I didn't like that. So I went back and added quite a bit more of the aqua alcohol ink, more blending solution to help that ink move. I'm going to just tip that up, see what I get. Add a little bit more. It's really, for me, I find this really kind of relaxing and fun. Just to try to create different backgrounds. And I like to use something, the palette knife was handy, just to pick it up so I can keep my fingers out of it while the ink is drying. Because otherwise I find that I get finger marks all over and I'm super disappointed. So there's what it looks like. I love it. This one has a little bit more of a circle design in the background than the green one, but still very kind of imperfect. Next, I'm going to take my background. I'm going to kind of lay out and figure out where everything is going to go and grab my sentiment that I'm going to use for this card. There's so much room in my heart for you. And using the stamp positioner, I'm going to stamp this with white StazOn ink onto my alcohol inked background. I have tried stamping and embossing and I just didn't really like the results on a different project, not this one. So I'm going to go with my tried and true white, cotton white StazOn ink. I did end up having to stamp it more than once. I think if I'd waited just a little bit longer for my alcohol inks to completely dry, I wouldn't have had to have done that. But it turned out great and I was very happy with the results. Thanks for joining me today for these cards featuring Altenew's December 2017 release. The supplies I used to create my cards are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more cards featuring Altenew that you might be interested in. Thanks for watching and we'll catch you next time.